Daily Show host Jon Stewart sat down with Bernie Sanders to discuss the rebuilding of Americans' trust in government. In the latest episode of Stewart's podcast, The Weekly Show, the pair delved into the transitional period America now finds itself in.
We appear to be in a transitional period where we are not sure about whether the ground we are standing on is solid, although the news media seems convinced that we are the roadrunner and the coyote has run over the cliff, and we just looked down and realized there's nothing under our feet, and now we are plunging to our deaths because the news media is always very circumspect.
Recently, you may have noticed Elon Musk came out and said, you know what? We should be cutting military spending. How many Republicans will go along? So when they say good things and appropriate things, I think we should work with them.
How do you walk that tightrope? Because what I find is there is a gag reflex from, and I think both parties have it, a gag reflex on Robert Kennedy says, ultra-processed foods are killing Americans. And I'm like, yeah.
That's right.
God awful. That's got to change. But if you were to say that, boy, are you just dogpiled.
An advocate for the centrist Forward Party, Holden Cullota, wrote on X, "This is exactly the behaviour that has left so many people feeling alienated from the Democratic Party." CEO of Pickaxe, a social content platform that advocates for free speech, Jeff Dornick, posted, "The right does this too. It wasn't that long ago that Republicans attacked Michelle Obama for putting healthy food in schools."
Yeah, I think that interview with Jon Stewart and Bernie Sanders was very interesting as they discuss hopes for an alliance that we are talking about a lot on Rising these days, a potential alliance between progressives like Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna and aspects of the incoming Republican administration to find areas of the government that we agree on cutting, particularly as it pertains to defense. So I was glad, I'm talking about it a lot, that I'm happy to see Bernie Sanders saying he'll do that, and Jon Stewart saying he wants to be a voice for that as well, and pointing out a phenomenon I think is very real, that the mainstream media pounces, to use their favorite construction. Republicans pounce. Republicans always pouncing on everything. The mainstream media pounces on these, controversial figures or provocative figures like RFK Jr., like Tulsi Gabbard, etc., and goes after them for everything, even when they're saying some things that progressives have been saying, or Democrats or liberals have been saying, even garden variety liberals have been saying for years about the food and our health and the way it's regulated. And I don't even know that I agree, but it's something that liberals used to believe in, but now it's because RFK Jr. is the advocate of it. They got to go the other way or say it's all going to be bad.
Yeah, and I think that is generally a problem in politics. I wish I could remember now, there was some policy during the Obama era where a pollster had the unusually bright idea of saying, do you agree with this policy? And then asked a separate sample, do you agree with this policy as advocated by then President Obama? And the Democratic approval for it went up massively in the ones that you said, it's Obama who wants it. No, I don't think that's only a Republican or Democratic thing. I think that tendency is quite widespread. As far as the controversial figures are concerned, I try to be very careful in what I criticize them for.
And you are very careful. To credit you tremendously. I think our viewers appreciate that you, yes.
Thank you, Robby.
Independent thinker.
Well, for example, I have been critical at times of Tulsi Gabbard on this show, but I was reading something just preparing for this morning's show where there was a story written, and in this story there was a link saying regarding Bashar al-Assad that Gabbard has defended his regime. So I thought, has she? I wasn't sure she exactly had done that, although she did meet him. And I click on the link and it's not her defending his regime at all. It's her saying that Syria is not a danger to the United States, which isn't to say that Bashar al-Assad is a great guy. She might think Bashar al-Assad is a great guy. I wouldn't have gone to meet him in 2017 as she did, but that's neither here nor there. I think you have to be fair in what you criticize people for.
Right, I agree with that. And this is the position that advocates for nation building and regime change and interference always try to put anti-interventionists on both the right and left in this box of saying, oh, so you must support, if you don't think that this is a valid U.S. military target, you must support the atrocities being committed by the regime. It's like a, when did you stop beating your wife kind of construction that is just so pathologically unfair. They are not living in reality. The reality is we fear we would cause more misery and more suffering and more instability and not do our own security any favors by being involved. And we've seen that time and time again. That has been how events have borne out. They have validated that fear and that concern. And that's very much how I'm feeling right now about the Syria perspective. I think we're still, gauging reactions. I've been happy to see people like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump saying the president's position, the next president, Donald Trump's position is that this is not our fight and we should not be involved. Of course, we just did see the mass bombing of ISIS targets in the region, which I don't know that I necessarily object to. We are at war with ISIS, although there is no actual authorization to attack ISIS in Syria, so maybe we ought not to be involved. And if the incoming regime is going to have an ISIS contingent, maybe we don't want to provoke hostilities. It seems like a mess, and the best way is to be as minimally involved as possible.
Yeah, I think I'm more, I don't know if I'm more optimistic about the future of Syria than you are. Maybe I'm not.
Well, you certainly are, because I am not optimistic at all. I am pessimistic. So if you're even slightly optimistic, you're more optimistic than I am.
Well, maybe I'm more jubilant about the downfall of Assad, I think, because I think that he's just a terrible
good riddance,
and a terrible regime. And so I think that, there was no bright future for Syria if he had stayed in power. So now he's out. It's good that he's out. And we'll see if the Syrian people can get themselves together to have some better situation. You mentioned previously the example of Libya, which is not a particularly auspicious example, to say the least. But we will hope for a better day than that.
More Rising coming up next. We're going to talk about AOC. What does her political future look like? Stay tuned.